Welcome to Honest Money. I'm your host, Anja, and today's episode is brought to you by Hardblock. Hello, welcome back to another episode of Honest Money. Joining me today is Scott Phillips. He is the CIO or the Chief Investment Officer at Motley Fool. Welcome to Honest Money, Scott.
Anja, thank you for having me, mate. I'm looking forward to our chat.
Me too. I really wanted to have you on because you are one of those rare people who have done the work. You've read some books on Bitcoin and you're still not all that convinced. So let's talk about that. I know you were recently on the Australian Bitcoin podcast, but I'm keen to know, that was about 3 months ago. Have there been any updates in what you think of Bitcoin now?
Great question. I do the Motley Fool Money podcast too with Andrew Page, and we've had on the show. We talked a lot about it there too. So if people want updated thoughts generally, they can get them there as well. My thought effectively about Bitcoin. I've been through the ringer. I owned some Bitcoin years ago and then sold it. I bought it because when it first kicked off, I was like, well, you kind of have to do it to learn about it, right? To be part of it, see what the process and all that kind of stuff. So I did that. And then I sold it after that and kind of just watched from the sidelines. And I don't think I'm rewriting history. I don't think I've ever been a Bitcoin bear. What I have been for the longest time, and still remain to some degree, is a Bitcoin, not even agnostic, but someone who recognizes or tries to recognize the opportunity, but also the risk. And for an investor like me, I try and follow Warren Buffett's lead of having a very, very large too hard pile, right? So there's stuff I know I like, there's stuff I know I don't like, and there's a massive pile of stuff which is just, and this time I'm talking about shares, and it's like, I don't know. I don't have a strong enough conviction. I don't know the answer strongly enough to be prepared to make an investment. And I did buy some Bitcoin, what was it, last October, I think it was. And the thesis in my head is still unproven. And so it's a very small position for me. And it largely just simply comes down to, for all of the technological, for all of the monetary, what's the right word, benefits or positives or logic or any of that sort of stuff, right? It only and ever, to my mind, comes down to, but will people do it? And that's a future thing, right? And I don't believe anyone who says, of course they will because. You can't know. No one can know. You can say, I think they will because, and that's completely cool. You say, I think they won't because, and that's completely cool. And same with Coke and Woolies. Like, will people keep shopping at Woolies? There's a pretty good chance they will, right? Definitely no, pretty good chance. With Bitcoin, the simple question for me is one of adoption. It is simply a matter of, we have a technology that is super cool. We have a solution to broken money, which is super cool. Neither of those things mean necessarily we will take those things up, in my mind. And so it's just a question of, if this peters out, ends up being some kind of sideline thing that some people use for some purposes, then that's all it does. If it replaces money entirely, that's what it does. The range of those outcomes is just massive. And there's no way to know the future. You can use some indicators to say, I think this is happening. And why I kind of bought it eventually, just to get back to your question, was there seems to be enough critical mass of adoption now for me to be comfortable to start to get some exposure to Bitcoin. Not to replace my portfolio with Bitcoin, it's a tiny position percentage-wise, but it was kind of like a first step into that world based on the adoption by institutions, governments, larger investors, the very fact that it's sustaining itself after this period of time. When I say nothing about price, though, by the way, I mean, price is to some degree an indicator of Bitcoin's popularity for reasons that I'm sure you know and your listeners know, but broadly, it's all about, for me, the question of adoption. I think it is more likely now than I did 3, 5, 7 years ago. That's why I bought some last October.
Yeah. Well, if you bought last October, you'd be down, Scott.
I've done a lot. I didn't quite pick the top, but almost picked the top. So I will tell you, my US dollar buy price was $106,000 at that point. The high was 125, I think. I bought 106, and yes, ever since, I was the capitulation trade. If I'm telling you I'll buy more Bitcoin, you should sell yours and wait till I sell and you can buy back again. Yeah, no, it's been a horrible experience thus far. Look, I've been investing for decades, right? So I'm used to big falls, and it sucks. And I'm like, okay, that sucks, but it just is what it is.
That is so funny. But you also said, if I heard correctly, that you previously bought and then sold the first round. Did you make money, break even, or lose money that time as well?
So the first time, yeah, I don't remember actually. I know I made some money the first time. Actually, made some good money.
Okay.
And had I kept those Bitcoin, have made even more money since then. So yeah, it's a horrible story. It was I literally I won't disclose the recent purchase. The first time I bought $100 worth, right? So it just was like, not, and it was literally at the time to have gone. It was getting popular as an investment advisor. People were asking me about it. I had a view, which I still maintain, that the dial has shifted, but the question has largely been the same question, which is just adoption. But I bought some just to kind of be part of the process. Set up an account, do all that kind of stuff. It was only with that online exchange, just $100, just so I could literally go through the process and know what it was like. Had a wallet on that exchange. I closed it out. I don't know how many years ago it was, but yeah, just it was just to get some experience of being a holder rather than as an investment in itself. And it was more just a responsibility as an investment advisor at that point. I thought I have to at least have waded into it. And like everything, right? If you own some, you take more interest in it. There are some great investors who have portfolios with 300 and 400 companies in them, and really small portions. But the idea they buy a little bit, so they've got skin in the game. It just makes you more interested, more engaged. It makes you do the work. Even if it ever stays that small, that was kind of their idea. And for me, I took Bitcoin the same way of, okay, if I get involved, if I start to go down that path, I can learn a little bit more about the asset from not the outside, not entirely the diamond hands inside, but just that idea of a little bit of exposure just to get some experience and some knowledge.
Yeah. No, that's super interesting because to me, it's like knowing that there's so many people that are in it kind of for ideological reasons just almost makes me confident that it's never going to go to zero because some people like are irrational
Yes.
when it comes to it.
100%.
But I'm very curious to know, like, has your perception of Bitcoin shifted like before and after reading those two books that you've read, which is Broken Money and the Bitcoin Standard? Or were you always kind of the same even before you read those books?
That's a very good question. I haven't been asked that question before. It's a really good question. I suspect subconsciously it made me more prepared to buy. Consciously, no. But if I'm honest about what we know about the human brain, subconsciously, probably yes. They say you become like the 5 people you spend most time with, right? I suspect reading those books relatively in quick succession, I think it might have been 1 or 2 in between, it gets in your head as an idea or as a concept or as a thought. And so probably, yeah, I suspect I was. Again, not consciously. If I said, did I decide at that point? No, absolutely not. Did I read the book and go, I really need to invest? No, absolutely not. And it's why I will direct your listeners, if you don't mind, just to Andrew and I did 2 episodes of Motley Fool Money recently. We did 2 Sound Money episodes. And we actually mentioned Bitcoin maybe once or twice in about 3 hours of conversation. And I say that only to make the point that those books were interesting about the history of money, which I thought was fascinating. And I knew a bit about it, but it was a really nice one. The concept of sound money is fascinating and just a really big mess with your head, right? And a kind of really different paradigm of what we think we're used to now these days. So that was really useful. Did it make me think Bitcoin was going to be the solution? Because to some degree, the adoption problem is one of critical mass and it's one of inertia. And you've got to get to a certain tipping point before you can replace. Sound money doesn't matter unless, from a Bitcoin perspective, sound money doesn't matter unless Bitcoin is adopted by everybody and becomes the de facto standard. Up to that point, it's just a really cool technological way to exchange value. Now that's worth a lot in itself, but that doesn't necessarily, you mentioned ideological, it doesn't get us to that point necessarily. It may well be that Bitcoin becomes a really valuable asset, but we never actually have sound money. It just sits on the side as something different, more like gold has been for centuries, right? Gold is a sound type of money to some degree, but it doesn't replace the system, the broken money system, hence the title of the book. So did it change me? Yeah, it probably made me more comfortable with the concepts, I suspect. Broken money in particular, and all does a great job of talking about some of the ways that Bitcoin can be used and is being used, and that was fascinating and eye-opening. So yeah, I'm sure it made me more comfortable with the idea. Some of the worked kind of objections and the kind of response to those objections, I think were probably useful to have gone through logically. And Bitcoin Stand's a funny old book. It's got some outlandish claims in it, and I loved half of it. The other half of it, I was wasting my time. It was just ideological nonsense. Yes, really good books. I would recommend people read them just to get an understanding. Keep those two things in mind. The other thing I will say is investing is largely psychology, right? I mean, it matters at some level. Money's psychology. It's all trust and stories we tell ourselves. The only thing I will say about sound money, broker money in particular, was if you set up the objections and then respond to them, you can potentially, I'm not saying Lynn did this at all, but you can set up the objections that you have the answers to. People say these 5 things, here's the answer to these 5 things.
Yeah, it's like almost leading the witness, is that?
Right, so,
Yep.
and which questions weren't asked and answered. Don't talk about that. Just talk about these objections you overcome. Well, see, I've overcome all the objections, you're fine now. I'm not saying she did that at all, I promise you I'm not. But because I'm a skeptic at heart, not a cynic, but a skeptic, I did kind of go, am I just being, that's great analogy. Is the witness being led here? And maybe, yes. So keep that in mind if you're going to read it. Just make sure you're not looking for confirmation bias too, because that's the other thing, right? If you can't start with that, you're like, yeah, exactly. See, I told you. Are you hearing the questions that aren't being asked or being highlighted? They're just worth thinking about. But yes, really good book. Bitcoin Standard said half brilliant, half ordinary, but both well worth reading.
Quick one for the Aussies listening. Hardblock is offering a $10 sign-up discount right now. And if you're with another exchange, ask yourself this: are they Australia's longest running Bitcoin-only exchange? Because if not, maybe it's time to switch. Head to hardblock.com.au/join/honest money and start stacking sats today. I love it. Yeah, the Bitcoin Standard was the book that kind of orange pilled me. But
Right.
yeah, the Broken Money is the one that you usually recommend to most people, particularly if someone is very, very thorough and doesn't want to be told what to think, because I think
Yes.
she does. Yeah, I think she does a good job of like weighing up different theories and saying, well, this group of people believes in this and this group of people believes in that, and kind of helps guide you. But yeah, I do agree there is definitely some guidance there, whether intentional or unintentional. I think we all tend to do it. But yeah, even like my sinister, not sinister, but my hidden agenda for inviting you in this podcast is I wanted a timestamp, because I am pretty confident that one day you're going to like Bitcoin. So I just wanted to document this journey and be like, this is Scott in 2026.
Nice.
And
No, I love
yeah,
it. So I do like Bitcoin. So this is where, and that's what's really, I'm one of those relatively few people, frankly, who like Bitcoin a bit, because you either love it or you hate it, right? I'm in a phone box. I'm in a phone box by myself. When I have a meeting of the Bitcoin Slightly Appreciators Club, there's only me in that phone box, right? There's nobody else, because you either hate it or you love it, right? And I don't mean that in any arrogant way. It's just where my head's at. So I like it enough to have bought some. So the first time I bought it because I was curious. This time I bought it because I think there's a good chance. There's a probabilistically more likely than not chance that it becomes more valuable over time because of that increased adoption. And so it's the increased adoption curve that I'm looking at. I think Bitcoin is spectacular technologically. I think the idea of sound money is brilliant. Does that mean Bitcoin's going to be successful? No, not necessarily, right? I'm saying it's not. I'm saying it's not necessarily going to. The question is just how many people adopt it, how quickly, and when it gets to maturity, what price is that? And maybe it's $1 million, maybe it's $10 million, maybe it's $14. It's somewhere, right? And so if it goes to 100, which replaces money, then it's worth squillions more. Will we get there? I don't know. How close will we get to that? I don't know. And so for me, and all investing rides probability. So that's the other thing, is when I think about Bitcoin, I think about the same context as Woolworths. And I say to myself, is Woolies going to be around in 10 years' time? Probably. Is it going to be selling more baked beans in 10 years' time? Yeah, probably. Is it going to make more money at that point? Probably, yeah. Now, in some version of the future, Amazon and Costco take over the Australian retail market. Woolies doesn't exist as a small portion, right? Or it is successful, and it's a bit successful, but the price today is too high relative to all that future success looks like. So Woolies is I'm going to say 32 or 33 bucks at the moment, something like that. If in 5 years' time it exists and it's bigger and people shop there and the promise of Woolies has played out, but the shares are at $25, I will have lost money even though I was right about what the future looks like. So that, again, I say that in the context, I know most of you listen to Bitcoiners rather than share investors, but from my lens, I'm a probabilistic. I think you can only invest probabilistically, right? And so the companies I own, I don't own Woolies, by the way. The companies I own because I believe they are likely to be worth more in future, not because I'm sure they will colonize the world. And so I'm taking the same approach with Bitcoin, which is why I bought some recently, or was it 4 months ago, almost 5 months ago. Was specifically that reason was I think now it's more likely than not that it's worth more. How much more? I don't know. Colonize the world? I don't know. But given the adoption, given the increased usage, given all the stuff that we know, it seems that adoption will continue to increase, just as Coke sales will continue to grow. And that's in my head, that's the methodology I use as an investor. And that's why Bitcoin made it inside my portfolio with just a little bit, just for now. I wouldn't be surprised either, Anja, if I buy more in a month, 2 months, 5 months, 12 months, 2 years. I may well, absolutely. If the adoption continues and my confidence in that adoption continues, that's what I'm going for. But really, really clear, and this is unusual for many people who own Bitcoin, I'm not there for the mission. I'm not there because I believe that it will completely colonize everything, become sound money, replace currencies, all that stuff. Maybe it will, I'm not saying it won't, but I'm not in it for that. It's not an end game of 0 or 100. It's just like, a bit like gold. I think we'll probably have, use more of it in future. More people will want it in future, and if they do, it'll be worth more. That's my entire thesis, the adoption first, second, and third.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can certainly relate to that. Obviously, you're a lot more skeptical than I am, but I can certainly relate because I sometimes think as well, like if I had known what I know about Bitcoin now, say 2014, would I have bought some then? Probably not, because I think everyone has their own frame in terms of how long something needs to be around. So while I am an early adopter, I definitely would not have felt comfortable until I saw some of those bigger institutional players come in. So I kind of feel like, there's that saying, you get Bitcoin at the price you deserve, which sounds a bit, like
everyone gets the price they deserve.
It sounds a bit mean, but I think it's more about like, if you know about something, it's about your kind of risk tolerance as well. And for me, my cost average is about 100,000 USD. So like, Australian dollars. So I kind of, I bought in, I did some lump sums, I DCA'd, and I kind of rode the wave up and rode the wave down. I'm like, okay, I'm back to where I started. So
right.
But
that's
I still
investing,
like
mate.
it.
That's investing. Yeah, nice.
I still like it. But I know you're a share, like that's your kind of preferred weapon, if you will. Does Bitcoin make you kind of appreciate, or does it make you curious about what Michael Saylor is doing with his, preferreds and all of that? Are you interested in that, or is it still a bit too much like, oh, this is overvalued, I don't understand this particular product? It is a bit unique.
So I like what he's doing, if he's right in the end, because that's kind of all it comes down to, right? So is it seriously clever? Yeah, absolutely. And so he's found a way to leverage into Bitcoin without using debt, which is brilliant, right? Why would you not? If you're right. Of course, if you're, collecting Beanie Babies or yo-yos because you think that's going to be the future, and you get them really, really cheaply, and no one wants to buy yo-yos anymore, doesn't matter how many you've got, you've still got, your yo-yo collection is worth nothing or close to nothing, right? So, and I'm going to say again, this is not a criticism at the slightest. It comes back to adoption and final price. It's a really seriously clever strategy, a great way to do it. And he's thought really long and hard about it. I do think the opportunity gets arbitraged away at some point. So getting there early is absolutely what it's all about. But he's still got to be right. And again, I know people yelling at the pod machine now saying, of course he's right. And he might be. I'm not saying he's not. I said, I own some Bitcoin. I'm not anti-Bitcoin. I'm not even on the fence. I'm slightly positive. Right? I'm in that space. But I've got to be right, and he's got to be right. If he's right, of course it's a super smart way to do it. Really smart. Tether doing similar things, with the way they're kind of, changing some of their profit into Bitcoin. If any money, any sat stacking to whatever method you use to do it, if you're right, the more of it you own when the price goes up, the wealthier you're going to be. So it makes a lot of sense. He's a really persuasive guy. I like what he has to say. Because I'm a skeptic in everything, and again, not cynical. So I'm an optimist by nature, Anja, by the way. I'm a massive optimist. I'm a massive Pollyanna. You mentioned, we were talking about Andrew Page. Generally, in our podcast, I'm the optimist, he's the pessimist, right? So I'm a massive optimist, but I'm also a skeptic. So it's kind of like I'm always looking for what's the angle, what am I being sold, what am I being told? And the hardest part with Bitcoin, I've said to Andrew a lot, the hardest part with Bitcoin is you don't get the you don't get the awareness and adoption without the absolute ideologues, diamond hand, laser eyes, just the full-on, I'll say nutbags for fun. I don't mean you, I don't mean other people. You know the ones I'm talking about, right? The ones that just can't possibly say any other outcome, right? Those guys. And so you don't get it without them. The problem is that they become almost objectionable as part of that. You know, I've got to become part of the cult if I buy some Bitcoin. I said, no, I'm just going to buy it because, you know, my point about Saylor, my point about everyone else is when you're a disciple, when you're an acolyte, when you're someone who's out there preaching the good word, the confidence and the conviction is really valuable. But it's a bit like you know, this will annoy some people as well. It's like the climate change thing, right? You got people like renewables are the only answer, and some people are, nuclear is the only answer. And I'm like, you guys are so polarized. I can't have a reasonable conversation in the middle with any of you because you've all got your agendas, you're all trying to push your thing, and so I don't even know if I should listen to any of you. And so it's kind of the same bit here with, and it's really hard to be agnostic about Bitcoin, right? Because as I say, you either love it because you think you get it, or you hate it because you don't think it. So it's hard to be genuinely agnostic, or at least open to and aware of, be able to discuss the pros and cons, right? Ask an anti-Bitcoiner for the pros, they'll find zero. Ask a pro-Bitcoiner for the cons, they'll find zero. And neither can be true by definition, right? Just you know, nothing's perfect. There is no perfection. There's better, there's great, there's awesome, there's wonderful. There is terrible, there's atrocious, you know, but there's always going to be both. So I love what he's doing. Because I'm an investor, but the cynicism and the flip side of that is the confirmation bias. So I'm trying to keep myself out of, you know, a person who agrees with me about a thing said a good thing about the thing we agree about. So therefore it's good. Like, yeah, kind of course, right? I could quote myself either and say, gee, Scott Phillips likes Bitcoin, I should buy something. So we've got to be a little bit careful with the high priest of anything. And again, shares and trading and all, like anything. Just be mindful of, are they genuinely giving you the unvarnished, honest pros and cons truth? Or are they out there just preaching the good word? And if they are, that's cool. If you like your religion, that's knock yourself out. I'm just not sure that you're going to get a balanced view, and that's okay. Just for yourself as an individual, my job is to say, all right, I know what that person's view is. I got a guy on Twitter who gives me grief about my Bitcoin, tiny little bit, every couple of weeks, right? And I'm not listening to him. And I'm not listening, but I'm also not listening to the pro because, Scott, you finally, the scars have fallen from your eyes. You finally get it. Welcome to the club. I'm not listening to any of you. I don't.
I want to know who this is.
It's not helpful to me. It's just not helpful because the bit in between is hey, there's no certainty in life. Understand, Charlie Munger, a great investor, always sort of, you've got to know the bear case better than the bears. Even if you're going to buy something. So if I'm going to buy Woolly shares because I think they're going to go up, I better understand the bear case because that means I know that I'm understanding the risks properly and I'm allowing for those risks when I make my investment. I think both those things are worthwhile and useful and important.
Yeah, absolutely. And you sound like an extreme centrist.
How so?
Oh no, like, because you said like you kind of see both sides of the extreme and you're right in the middle. So it's just a funny way of like extreme centrist because there's no such thing as extremes.
Right. Well, I mean, like that's again, let's get a bit off topic. That's like politics in general. It's very hard to radicalize someone to the center. You can radicalize them to the extremes. That's how we have populist politics, right? How do you radicalize someone to the center? Yeah, let's get annoyed about not much because really it's about balance and thought. But I want an emotional reaction to this. I hate those people. I love those people. I kind of like both of them a bit, and maybe there's some stuff in the middle we can talk about. I mean, man, try to do that on social media. It doesn't exist. It's a tough battle, but there we are.
Yeah, it really, really are. But I also wanted to touch a little bit on Ray Dalio. So like I'm going with him. There's obviously so many different people that are talking about this, but he's probably the most well-known and the most mainstream person talking about it, not some of the doomer groups in gold and sound money. And that is the changing global monetary order. So for me, it is about understanding money and building resilience, whatever that may look like. And I also don't like pushing my worldview onto other people. I like to invite people who have different perspectives on this show because I do want that kind of diversity of thought and diversity of dialogue to happen here. But, when I look at things like the de-dollarization, the BRICS nations rise to power, alternative currencies, whether they are digital currencies by governments like the Chinese yuan or, other CBDCs that are getting built globally, obviously stable coins, Bitcoin. What else? There's also, the US dollar losing the reserve kind of status slowly. I think the peak was in 2021. It was like around 72%. Now it's at around 10%. So there's like a lot of things going on, and I really don't know where things are going to land, and I don't think anyone does.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, this is kind of like the drive to help people at least get curious about Bitcoin as an alternative, and do your own research, make up your own mind. And I don't know what the question is. That was a really long rant.
No, it's good. No, it's good. It's a really good point. I'll drop in some thoughts in if you want. Do you want me to
Yeah, for sure.
Need a way to sign, verify, and secure your Bitcoin? Australia's one-stop shop for Bitcoiners has you covered. From signing devices, nodes, and backup solutions to bitaxes, decor, and apparel. Visit shopbitcoin.com.au.
All right. One of the things I think is, so I think Bitcoin's going to have two stages. I know this is not a blinding flash of insight, by the way. There's going to be a growth stage and a maturity stage. And I know you're talking about the broader macro rather than just Bitcoin, but in the context of this, why it's important, I think, is because a lot of people want to compare Bitcoin to cash and say Bitcoin is better than cash. Now, at maturity, that's absolutely true, okay? In other words, once you have a stable price, and again, pricing in dollars, I understand one Bitcoin's worth one Bitcoin, right? But work with me here. Once you have a stable purchasing power, let's call it that, then as money continues to grow, Bitcoin becomes more valuable, measured in that money, measured in purchasing power for all the reasons, right? Until we get all that. And so it's not even if that happens, when that happens, because we know what price, right? But Bitcoin stabilize. Let's say it stabilizes at 10 grand or 100 grand or $1 million, whatever number that ends up being. From that point, Bitcoin is, unless adoption changes, so I'm talking about maturity being effectively solid state, stable level, usage adoption, we get to a point and go, right, we're now there forever. Let's just call it that, right? At whatever level, whatever amount of money it replaces, other money it replaces, Bitcoin's mature. And at that point, like gold, it must be better than currency if the rate of increase is slower than currency, right? It just is. That's what I'm saying, like from a sound money, from Bitcoin, I get it, like absolutely true. Versus cash, right? Between now and then, the question isn't, is Bitcoin better than fiat currency? Because it must be by definition for all the sound money reasons. The question is, what is the, I'll say fair value. It's a very loaded term. It's really hard to have this discussion in any short period of time. The language and the terms. Whatever it ends up being worth eventually, if we're below that, there's growth opportunity. If we're above that, there's downside risk. And when we get there, we're there. I say that because between now and then, the value of investing in Bitcoin is the growth return you get. I'll call it the speculative return. I don't mean that in any way pejoratively. What I mean is you buy it at a price because you think it's going to eventually stabilize, because Bitcoin must stabilize. Well, it grows again in a US dollar sense by the rate of inflation, but you know what I mean. So it gets to maturity between now and then. That is a speculative decision based on what you think will happen in terms of adoption. That's all it can be, right? And I don't mean it pejoratively in the slightest.
No, I agree. Now, it is speculative. I also think fiat is speculative.
Totally, right? So this is my point. So this is exactly my point. Between now and then, the question is not, or should not be, only Bitcoin versus cash.
Yep.
Because if we're speculating on intelligent speculation, speculating on the decline of fiat, we're talking about hard, limited, scarce assets versus a printed fiat currency. And in that case, the question should never, ever just be Bitcoin or cash. Because I think if you're right about the fiat moves, and you probably are, Bitcoin should appreciate as long as the final price is above where we are now. Okay? Because we don't know what the final adoption is going to look like. So let's assume that it goes higher than that. Let's just assume that's right. But the question now is, okay, let's say fiat's declining, dead, in for some sort of reevaluation, something. The question isn't just cash or Bitcoin, it's cash or other scarce, valuable, rare, hard assets. And so for me, I can play, in inverted commas, the decline of fiat owning shares or farmland or commercial property, or Bitcoin, or gold, or whatever else there's not going to be more of, or meaningfully more of over that period of time. And I guess I'm just making that point not to poo-poo Bitcoin the slightest. But I think when people say, yeah, but Bitcoin's better than cash, I'm like, yeah, I agree. But that's not the only, shares are better than cash too. So we're talking about opportunity cost here, right? The question is, if you're not going to hold cash, because of all the reasons we don't want to hold cash, what should you hold instead? And Bitcoin's one of those options, but it's not, we should never distill it down to, well, if fiat's going down, then Bitcoin is obviously the right choice. It's a better choice than cash if you're right about that, but will Bitcoin outperform shares or farmland or commercial buildings or something else? And so that, just to your point about, the decline of currencies of fiats and US dollars, that's, to me, there's two questions. At maturity, it's Bitcoin versus cash, absolutely. By the way, at maturity, you want to own productive assets rather than Bitcoin, frankly. Now, that's going to annoy some people. But I don't own dollars today. And if they stop, let's say the Australian government tonight went, you know what, never going to print another dollar. Not going to have fractional reserve banking. We've now got a sound currency in Australia. I'm still going to own shares because they're going to grow faster than the purchasing power of owning that fixed currency. And so that's where it's really important. So there's the two phases. And you're right to say, if you're right about the de-dollarization, the collapse of fiat, massive money printing, whatever that ends up being, like Dalia was talking about, Bitcoin should do better from a fair value to a fair value. The question is, what is that fair value? We don't know. The same is true of shares, the same is true of property, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And yeah, with fiat, like, again, I completely agree. There's people on Twitter that aren't entirely honest and paint it in the worst possible light.
Yeah.
And look, I've been there, I've done that. But like, there's different, throughout history, we've had fiat experiments that have failed spectacularly in a very short amount of time. And then we've had fiat experiments that have kicked the can down the road. What's speculative for me about fiat is that no one can really answer how far you can kick it down the road. And the reason why I think they're implementing CBDCs is so they can have visibility and be able to kind of manage the life cycle of fiat, whatever that may be.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
Putting aside all the, scary kind of totalitarian risks that come with that, it's interesting. I don't know the answers. I find this stuff so fascinating. And yeah, I think it's good to understand it from as many different perspectives as possible. But what I am curious about, what you said about the life cycle of Bitcoin, and to me, it sounds like you are almost kind of treating it like a product or a tech stock or something like that, in terms of that it has that, growth phase and then maturity and then a decline. I'm not entirely...
Just so I'm clear. No, I'm not predicting decline, so growth and maturity.
Yeah. Okay, right.
Keep going.
Yeah. I guess where I was going with this is like one interesting rabbit hole, and I'm using that term as well. Rabbit hole is the understanding protocols. So protocols are very different to products, and they operate very different and have very different growth. I would really like to invite, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, an expert on protocols to help me understand, I guess, that adoption from a Bitcoin perspective. It's not like from what I've read, it's not like you can have competitors to protocols. There's one. And once it establishes critical mass, which it already has in Bitcoin, this is it. We haven't had a historical example that I am aware of technological protocols that have been replaced by something else. There's been attempts, but it has never happened. So, yeah, I mean, I'm just talking out loud now. I'm not exactly sure where I was going with all of that.
No, it's an important point.
Yeah.
So the adoption, when I talk about the phases, so at some point, we all have as much Bitcoin as we want in the context of the transference of our store of value, medium exchange, all the stuff from fiat to Bitcoin. Maybe my entire wealth, maybe my entire cash experience, so transaction saving, is all in Bitcoin at some point. Or maybe I only ever use it to store. Or maybe I use it as an asset like gold, where it's kind of the side. Whatever that ends up being. So gold is mature, right, as an asset, okay? And we've come to a point where there's a lot of it out there. It's found its own price. Yes, it still moves around. It's still volatile because people buy and sell it and want more and want less. We've seen over the last 18 months what it's done. But the concept has matured. And so now when no one's really saying, when everybody all of a sudden wants gold, we are going to have a price that's $1,000 an ounce for gold, right? As in that it may happen over time just with slow, currency inflation, frankly. But, it's reached some degree of maturity. Now, still volatile, as I said, but it still fluctuates. But, we're there or thereabouts within a range. Even if it halves or doubles, it's kind of there, and it's going to stay there. Bitcoin's on that journey to whatever it ends up being. That's exactly why I suspect 95% of people own Bitcoin, which is, I think, at some point, it's going to be worth more money, or it's going to have more purchasing power if you don't want to express it in fiat terms. Because everyone's going to want it, everyone's going to use it, and so if I have some now, it's going to be worth a lot more in the future. So that's the growth bit. And when I say growth, maybe I should talk about the adoption bit, right? So there's an adoption curve, and that adoption curve will effectively eventually be dead flat. Not the price, but the curve itself. In other words, at some point, we'll all have as much Bitcoin as we can afford and want and need and use, like gold or like cash. And at that point, the increase is going to effectively just be the relative increase anyway in purchasing power will be the equivalent of the inflation of the currency, because there is no, unless more people want more of it. I mean,
population increase.
To some degree.
I agree. We'll flatten out at some stage, but I don't think it's ever going to go completely flat.
2% a year. That's 2% a year. I mean, 2% a year. Look, it's not bad. I don't mean that critically at all.
No. What
I mean is that let's say it's population. Let's say population increases at 3% a year. Let's pick a number, and let's say inflation runs at 3% a year. Okay, so Bitcoin's purchasing power increases at 6% a year. At that stage, in that maturity stage, if I can get an asset like a share or property, I'm not saying there's a better. I'm just saying the opportunity cost question is simply, do I get 6% in Bitcoin, or I can get 7 or 12 or 13% somewhere else? And that's when Bitcoin versus cash is very real as a conversation. But you're still at maturity looking at which gives me the best return. And it'd be really unlikely for a money, capital M money, to give you a higher return once we have reached maturity compared to a brand new business that invents the iPhone, or a supermarket that's able, you know what I mean? So that's where I just want to make that difference between the growth or the adoption phase and the maturity phase. During adoption, there's no point comparing Bitcoin to cash, because you're not. You're comparing it. I mean, the concept might be that I think this is why it's going to grow, but no one's saying I'm buying Bitcoin to get 3% a year, which is the inflation rate, or 7% a year, which is no one's buying Bitcoin because they want to grow slightly faster than money supply. They want this thing to 10x on adoption, which is great. It's not a bad thing at all. So I own it. I don't. If other Bitcoin was at full adoption, I'd sell it and buy shares instead, because I think the upside for shares is better than the upside for money when it's mature. But to get there, that's what we're all hoping. I own Bitcoin. I'm hoping too. Adoption rises, and I make money on the adoption rise. But that's the process of adoption. The same as when we first moved from shells to shekels, there was an adoption of shekels. If you had a lot of shekels to start with, you did really, really well. Yeah. And if you got the shekels early, you did better because there weren't that many of them going around, and so I had to have a shekel, and that's how it worked. So that's I hope that makes sense. That's kind of what I'm talking about when the two time frames. Bitcoin versus cash is not a conversation today, in my opinion, that justifies owning it. You can say eventually Bitcoin will replace cash, and that adoption curve looks like this, and that's why I'm buying. But you can't compare Bitcoin's return to cash's return. Now make the case for Bitcoin specifically, own on that basis, unless you also say and versus shares and versus property and versus something else.
Yeah. What would give me personally more conviction around the long-term adoption would be if I were to see Bitcoin being used as a medium of exchange a lot more than it is today. So if I see that in my lifetime, I'll be very happy.
Well, man, that's it, right? Now, by the way, you can use a medium of exchange now. But we're in the adoption phase of how frequently.
And I do.
Yeah.
I do use it as a medium of exchange, but it's not like I'm still using Australian dollars most of the time, like 95% of the time. Exactly. So, yeah. Oh, and obviously, like in the global south, it is used a lot more as a medium of exchange than a store of value. I find that really, really fascinating. Mm-hmm. But, in the Western world, we're using it as a store of value. That's super, But I wanted to know do you have any other books that you're going to read on Bitcoin, or you're kind of done?
So no, I'm not planning to. And largely because I sound like a broken record, Anja, and I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Largely because I don't need to be convinced about Bitcoin's inherent characteristics or value. Yeah. It doesn't matter. Because I'm not here for the mission. By the way, I'd love sound money as a concept, right? So the mission of sound money is useful. The mission of Bitcoin is not very useful to me at all, right? If we went to a sound Australian dollar currency standard, I'm happy with that. I don't need to then push the Bitcoin train because I don't need it to be Bitcoin for the sake of being Bitcoin. Other than the fact I'd like to make some money out of it. So Sound Money is a mission of sorts. I'm not even seriously, massively kind of all in on it. Just like, I get it and it'd be cool. And if we did that, it'd be great. By the way, getting to Sound Money would be an absolute economic just mess for years. So we kind of got to be careful what we wish for, right? To get to the other side of that, that's a whole different conversation. But that is messy as hell and painful as hell. So we've got to get to that. If we were to get to that, we'd have to get to that. So I'm here for the Bitcoin mission. I'm here to make some money if adoption rises. So you ask about the book question. The reason why is I don't need to be convinced about its technological superiority. I don't need to be convinced about the value of sound money. I don't mean that in an arrogant sense. I'm not saying I know everything about it. What I'm saying is that none of that would change my view. Bitcoin is amazing as a technology. If I was convinced it was even more amazing, it would have absolutely no difference on my view. If I was convinced it was the best invention ever, it would have no difference on my view. Because it doesn't matter what I think. The price only goes up if you think it, and everyone else thinks it, and people who are listening to this think it, and their cousins think it, and their cousins' friends think it. That's when I start to make some money, right? So I'm not, my understanding of Bitcoin, I'm not investing a small amount only. I have got only a tiny amount. The reason it's tiny is not because I don't think Bitcoin is legitimate or going to sort of succeed or is not a solution to sound money. It's none of those things, right? So I'm not, the only reason, my only question, this is literally a one-dimensional question, is will more people want it and use it in future? How many more? And where will the price settle? Because here's the other problem. Let's say more people use it, like the Woolies example, but the price still settles at $50,000. Because that's where we settle, right? Even if I'm right about more people using it, if the price is lower, it doesn't make any difference. And if it's brilliant, if it's the best invention ever, and it settles at $50,000, that's still the price. So the price will be determined by the adoption and usage and demand, not by however brilliant it might be. Now, more people joining the cult is useful to me because that means more adoption. So if other people read the book and go, oh my God, I want Bitcoin, I'm like, brilliant. If you guys all want Bitcoin, there's like 21 million of them, we know that, and people who own them already own them, and they're only going to sell them at a higher price. So hey, if a lot of people join the Church of Bitcoin, then I'm stoked, right? Because they're going to want more because they want their share of the pie. I sound a bit mercenary about it, because that's exactly what it is. For me, it's just a decision about if it's going to go up. I don't mean to sound arrogant, say I don't have to read any more about Bitcoin. I know it all. I don't know it all at all. What I am saying is it doesn't matter how much I know. What matters is how much other people want it. So it's about them, not about me from this point forward, in my view.
Not your keys, not your coins. If you're holding Bitcoin, your self-custody setup needs to be done right. MindRacks delivers paranoia-grade security so that you can sleep at night knowing that your money is protected. Take control and secure your money the honest way. Head to mindracks.com/honest money. I've learned to take it funny, like just the joke around the whole cult mentality. Like even yesterday, I noticed on Twitter that Gerard Rennick is going to be in kind of the Northern Rivers region doing some visits and talks at community centres. So he's going to be like in Grafton and Tamworth and Coffs Harbour and a few places like that. And I sent a question to the community and I was like, does anyone want to go say hey? Because he hates Bitcoiners. Like hates us. And I just thought like, let's be friendly. And everyone's like, nah. And I'm like, so you're saying you don't want to show up with the Bitcoin standard in one hand saying we're from the private sector and we're here to help.
So that's kind of the, so when I say cult, and I'm being funny and I'm being a little bit serious because man, there is some cult-like behavior about it but from some people, right? So you can be a fundamentalist Christian, or you can be a Sunday Christian, or you can just be a broad believer, right? And same with the other faiths, and that's great. It's just there's different people. By the way, I think the cult nature of it is really attractive. What else is a cult? Apple, Tesla.
I think that's also a strength of it because
totally, that's what I'm saying. That's what I love about it. So as an investor, I'm like, literally, I mean, I'm being facetious. Oh no, I'm trying to be funny about it just because it's fun. The more people who join the Bitcoin cult, the better. If you are all in and you add, oh man, I'm going to turn my entire investment to Bitcoin. It's like, great, another one for the tally. And if my Bitcoin, here's the Bitcoin bet I've got is not literally, but why I bought Bitcoin. If the church gets bigger, I make money. That's literally the story, right? So I love it. I love that it's a cult. I love that people want to jump in. I love people want to be part of it. Now, if the cult members will drink the Kool-Aid and the whole thing falls over, we're in massive trouble, right? Just to kind of extend the cult idea. So it's got to be a sustained cult, like Apple has been. I mean, the Apple phones are a little bit better than the others. Maybe not even, right? I own a Pixel. It's great. But Apple makes $1 squillion more in profit because people love their Apple more than they love their Pixels, more than they love their Samsung. And it's like, as an investor, I was an idiot because I didn't buy Apple. I looked at Tesla and went, I don't know how to value this. And it's like, I'm an idiot. People love Tesla, they love Elon. Like the cult of Elon is, I mean, man, Bitcoin's got nothing on the cult of Elon. You know, and so like that stuff is like, as an investor, I'm like, I want products. I want to own products. I want to own companies or assets like Bitcoin, where people are like, I'm so in. I've got the laser eyes. I've got the Bitcoin tattooed on my arm. I'm gonna turn up at the Northern Rivers and we'll copy the Bitcoin standard and you know try and. I mean, that seriously, like that's the key. I'm looking at that going, man, if that keeps happening, imagine. And this is, again, I don't mean to make it too cultish, and I want to annoy anyone or offend anyone who's religious. But imagine you turn up on the third day after Jesus rises from the cross and from the grave, and you go, this might be big one day. Imagine if I could have a share in Christianity. Now, obviously you couldn't, but think about that. Like the very idea that we could go to that. Same with the other religions. I said it's not about Christianity. Just I have that background as a kid. Like that. If that's the story, then man, if I can get leverage to the growth of that, then I'm in. So that, yeah, I kid about it. I hope I'm not offending any of your listeners. I hope they're all got a decent sense of humor. Somewhere, I mean, by the way, if you're offended by it, it might be because you're actually a member of the cult. If you're not offended by it, you're probably not, and that either of those is cool. But yeah, that's my thought about the adoption curve, and that's why it's so powerful. By the way, is the true believers are, man, they are full on, and that's great. You're out there preaching the good word, and if that works, then we all get rich.
Yep. I'm definitely a member of the cult with a sense of humor. So, but yeah, it's so interesting because when I was introduced to Bitcoin, they told me it's like you're going to go through a phase where you become overzealous, and it 100% happened. And I'm kind of coming out at the other end. I was like, wow, maybe I'm coming across too strong. And now I'm watching all the people that I orange pilled kind of go through this phase, and I'm like, wow, that's what I was like.
Yeah, right now, by the way, I love that people care that much. You know, if you're there to, if you created a cult to try and get rich, then I have no time for you. If you've created a cult because you're like, man, I've seen the truth, and the truth will set you free, and I just need everyone else to know it because I just believe this so fervently. It's still not necessarily particularly lovely to hang out with some of those people sometimes, but I love the passion is genuinely held and genuinely felt, and you just want to make it for all the reasons Bitcoin is great. If it becomes the money, that's a really good result, right? Again, really painful to go through. We haven't got time to talk about that. I'm happy to if you want to, but who knows what that looks like. It's going to be messy as hell, and it's going to hurt like hell, and it's going to be a really significant readjustment. If on the other side of that we go, it was worth it, then great. I'm all for it. So yeah, if you're there for the mission, if you love the mission, if you want to be part of the mission, if you want to go and knock on doors like the JWs or stand at the railway station out pamphlets, great, go for it. Because the other thing is, if it is better and people think it's better, then great. Then we win, right? Eventually, I don't mean win as in Bitcoiners win. I mean society wins. So yeah, if you're a member of the cult and the cult is doing good things and you're not, messing with other people, then fantastic, love it, go for it. Just also, by the way, and back to what I said before, if you are one of the cult, just recognize that sometimes your fervor can be off-putting for other people. I will say, I think it's very likely, if I'm honest about my subconscious, I suspect part of what took me so long to get into Bitcoin the second time around, no, seriously,
this is true for many people. I know what you're going to say. Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, I don't want to be like you. I think you're over the top. Instinctively, if someone pushes you, what do? You either push back or you just get out of there, right?
Yeah.
Either way, you're not being invited to the table. You're being either pushed into the table or pushed away from the table. And so in both cases, like, dude, John, no, I'm not. I'm instinctively putting up a barrier here because I don't want to hear your crap. Excuse my language. So I'm not, and it's probably cost me money, frankly, and that's on me, not on anybody else. But the reality is, you already made the point. Put it there, let people come to it, rather than pushing it on them. By all means, make them aware of it, hope they'll understand it. All the stuff you said already in the Sound Money book is a great recommend. So it's a great way to do that. But yeah, just if you're in the cult and you're a true believer, just let people come. Don't try and force it on them because that will push them away in most cases.
Yeah, it's interesting now. Like I'm thinking, where would we be at with adoption if we weren't like this?
Well, no, but so here's the other thing, right? So I think probably worse.
Okay, right.
You need the cult to get, like, you need the critical mass when no one wants to turn up to church, but the same 14 people turn up every week and keep the church alive while they wait for other people to come back. Without those people, the church dies. I mean, if the true believers all went, oh yeah, let's not bother. You don't. So it's up, and that's what I was saying before about the the cult members push people away, but without the cult members, there's nothing to bring them to. So it's intrinsically linked, and that makes it both wonderful and hard. But you can't have one without the other. You can't have the adoption and the awareness without the really hardcore true believers, right? But those people are also making it harder for adoption at the same time. So you need them for it. You kind of need them to at some point go, our job is done here. We've seeded it. It's like a startup founder, right? Some people are great at starting businesses, but not very good at running them. And at some point you go, I started up. I've done my thing. Here we go. I'm going to hand it over. Not necessarily, not literally. Keep your investment and do your thing, but just recognize that adoption of anything, new technology, new product, new idea, new money, requires people to be able to be brought on board in a very non-confrontational way because they see the opportunity for themselves rather than having feel like they're being pushed into it. And that becomes, because that's when you get the instinctive kind of pushback, just leave me alone, go away. So that, I think that's probably part of the problem. But as I said, I'm not going to criticize it because you don't, without it, there is no Bitcoin community. Without it, there is no sound money. Without it, there is no et cetera, right? It becomes it's the techies. We're back to 2014, as you mentioned before, and maybe we're still at 2014 levels. The true believers have done a great service, but broader adoption requires it to be more accessible and less polemic than I think the first couple of legs of growth.
Yeah, that's very interesting. But I think the cult members would be mad if I didn't ask you if you understand the difficulty adjustment.
Yes, only conceptually. I know absolutely nothing about the technology behind it, but yes, I'm absolutely aware of the difficulty adjustment.
Yep.
And again, so here's the. I know you had to ask it, and I'm going to again be that broken record. You, by the way, cut this podcast down to 15 minutes because I repeated myself all over the time. But the I don't need to know or believe or accept it in the sense that knowing more about it, it's like, oh, it does that. Oh, in that case, I think everyone's going to adopt it all of a sudden.
Well, you don't know how the combustion engine works, and you drive a car, so
right. And, well, no, but even it's not even me. See, you're right. These other things like I don't have to know how the combustion works for me to drive the car. I don't even have to drive the car. I just have to look at everyone else going, they're all driving cars. Gee, cars must be cars must be a thing. Cars are useful, and more people are driving cars now. Do more people understand the internal combustion engine? No. Did I have to have a stronger conviction in the combustion engine for more cars to be driven? No. The cars just became more popular because people went, I should use a car. I'm like, oh man, glad I got shares in the car company because I was right about that. And so for me, you're exactly right, mate. I'm not going to say, I knew a little bit about the combustion engine, so I bought one share. And then I learned that fuel injection's a thing. And so I bought 5 shares. And then someone told me about the way that spark plugs work with so I bought 10 shares. I was like, I don't need to know that. I know it works. I understand that it's a car. The combustion engine works. I know it. Fuel goes in, it combusts, literally, that's the idea. Drives the pistons, drives the wheels. Cool. Okay, got it. Is it worth more if I know more about the car? No. Not unless other people also go, I want the car. So yeah, you're exactly right. That's a perfect example.
I didn't think I would find the cryptography side of things and the technical side of things interesting because for me, like reading the Bitcoin standard, which is more like the economics case for it, like understanding hard money and understanding monetary history, that was enough. But I was so surprised how when I started learning about cryptography, how fascinated I was. And I remember learning about the difficulty adjustment because I knew of the supply cap. And I'm like, okay, I understand. It's the only finite asset that we have that has truly scarce. But then the difficulty adjustment, I feel like that's the magic because you are moderating the supply. You can't just flood the supply.
The supply too. Exactly. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and it's like it's insane that someone had thought of this. And again, just to just quickly explain the mechanism for any listeners that are not familiar with it. Basically, it's a mechanism that ensures that blocks are mined approximately every 10 minutes, and that is to ensure that regardless of the changes in the network computational power, which is also called the hash rate. So if you get a lot of miners on board who are trying to compete for the hash, basically they adjust every 2 weeks, or actually specifically every 2016 blocks, which is approximately every 2 weeks. And fun fact is some people think that the reason 216 blocks were chosen is because and I don't believe this, but it's because it's the reverse of 6101. 6102, 61. Yeah, I'm trying to reverse it in my mind. 02 executive order, which was to confiscate people's gold.
Oh, right. That's a cool. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
true, but it's a nice story. That's really cool.
It's a great story, but I think maybe I hope there was some more mathematical rigor behind it. They're just like, let me pick something symbolic.
Think of reverse, you might as well do it in the first place. And that's right. The combination of the genius, the absolute genius of the Bitcoin cryptography and the concept and the proof of add all those things together, right? And it is just mind-blowingly good. I'm in awe of Satoshi / whoever that they or him or her is, but also the group who, and I know you know this, the beauty of Bitcoin wasn't inventing much, if anything at all. It was kind of going, if I had a bit of that and a bit of that and a bit of that and a bit of that, and I put it all together, that would be a really cool way to actually have money. And it still blows my mind. Even I'm talking about now, I'm not anywhere near an expert, right? But the conversations and the research and the reading I've done, it's like you put all those things together and you made this thing that seems to be about as perfect as anyone could think of, because we still haven't been able to find, there's the occasional software upgrade, but broadly speaking, the kind of concept we started with, it's like without any of those things, this thing kind of falls over, right? And so, imagine without the difficulty adjustment. And the computing power over the last however many, decade and a half, and then go forward another 2 decades, without that, the whole thing falls over, right? They've already been mined probably by now, I suspect. So and throw in just proof of work. Just the broad concept of all that stuff together is just really cool. I'm an expert, as I said. So that's what I mean. I don't need to be convinced technology is amazing or the concept is incredible, and I'm not prepared to say nothing can be better either, by the way, because I don't know, right? It's kind of back to leading the witness thing. For the things we can think about, that seems perfect. If we got 50 years into the future and someone went, yeah, it turned out you missed these 2 things and no one thought of them. It's like, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. So, bugger, we thought Bitcoin was the answer. It turns out that these things were necessary and better and whatever. Now, so far, that doesn't seem likely because we've gone far enough. That's your point about 2014 versus today. We've got to a point where it's like, okay, it hasn't been done yet. So the chance someone finds something genuinely revolutionarily either a hole or something it doesn't do that can't do that maybe something else can do, or again you can always change the software, the code. So maybe Bitcoin just incorporates it. But either way, it's just so incredibly cool what it can do. And I am with you guys. I assume I don't know if you're you actually. Certainly Andrew Page is Bitcoin and everything else is rubbish. I'm of that view that at least as far as money goes, it seems like there is no second or no reason. There is a second, but it's so far away. It's not, the genius of the code, the genius of the thinking is just really, really super cool. So yeah, love it. But that's kind of just that's why I don't need to be convinced any further that Bitcoin's great. Other people do, and so they should read the book. And if they like it, they can buy some Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin price goes up. That'd be cool. But what I think is going to have absolutely no difference to the currency whatsoever. If I got more convicted, but other people got less convicted, I would still lose money. So it's just not about me anymore. I don't think it's about you anymore. I don't think it's about any of us anymore. It's about all of us. When I say all of us, I mean just the Bitcoins. I mean everybody. The degree to which we all go, I should do that. I should use that. I should use it as a medium exchange. I saw about that'd be cool. Okay, well then things change. But that's the starting end point for me.
Love it. Love it. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'll drop all the links with your podcast with Andrew Page in the comments, and anything else you want to add it there as well. Sorry, in the show notes, not the comments. And yeah, do you have any final things you want to share with my audience?
Oh man, you've asked some really good questions. I like the question about the book stuff and what else you're reading. Do you have any other thoughts? No, other than I would encourage, as an investment advisor, I'd encourage people to think probabilistically rather than absolutely. Only because it keeps your mind open to having it changed, and you have to do that, right? You have to do that because at some point, Andrew's a massive Bitcoiner, unless you're prepared to have your mind, no one wins. You don't win by having a closed mind. Because if you've got an open mind and you're still right, having an open mind and being correct is perfect, right? Because you're open and you're right. Having a closed mind and being wrong is absolute destruction. Because I wasn't open to being convinced. And now, I say otherwise, I mean positive and negative, right? Like literally, once you've decided a thing must be true, you're no use to yourself, let alone anybody else. So keep an open mind, keep thinking about it. And if it drives you further down that path, do that. If it drives you back from that path, that's okay too. But certainty kills rational thought. And you must remain rational as an investor in whatever asset you're buying, whether it's Bitcoin or something else. The second you stop being rational and you start believing your own PR, that's when you stop thinking, and that's when mistakes can happen. That's when you get yourself into trouble, because you're no longer looking for, what if I'm wrong? What if they're right? What if something else? That's the framework I think as an investor you must bring to the table. And then probabilistically, if you're like, yeah, it's not 100%, but 99%, 95%, 75%, 58%, more likely than not, you're in a pretty good place.
Love it. That's great message to leave everyone with. Thank you so much for your time, Scott.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me, Anja.
Still here? You're one of the good ones. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode. If you enjoy how we cut through the noise, consider supporting us directly via the Lightning QR code. Got a question or a thought to share? Comments are wide open. We'd love to hear from you. For bonus content and updates, follow us on socials at Honest Money Show. Until next week, take care of yourself and your money and stay decentralized.